My name's Stephen Anderson, and this is my persuasive speech. This is my audience. So when you think of fairness, you think everybody wants to be treated fairly. In every kind of situation, everybody wants to get the best treatment that they can, make sure everything's fair. And unfortunately in life, not everything is fair. Most of you know that. But if you're given the opportunity to make something fair, don't you think you should take it? I do. Many people go through their lives working, getting jobs, going to school, doing the best that they can to get in the best situation they can. And sometimes that doesn't always work out. And a lot of times it's because either grades weren't good enough, you didn't meet all the requirements that you needed, and sometimes you just don't know why you didn't get a job or didn't get into a school. And I'm here to uncover that for you and tell you that it's most likely affirmative action. For those of you who don't know, affirmative action is an action or policy that tends to favor those who suffer from discrimination in relation to unemployment, and it is also known as positive discrimination. Now, when you think of positive discrimination, those two words don't really go together that well. Being positive and discriminating, it sounds kind of like they cancel each other out and you're left with pretty much nothing. So, usually in a situation you want to positively reinforce somebody or give them positive criticism, but positive discrimination doesn't really sound like it's all that appealing. And this has been going on since about 1964, and before then, presidents mostly went and passed civil service laws, to help people who benefit from, or I guess not benefit, but who are discriminated against, and to benefit them, gave them more opportunities to get a job and make it out in the working world, or go to school, get a good education that they need, get scholarships and things like that. And unfortunately, people have started turning that against minorities, and minorities have been using it against majorities as well. And so this is how affirmative action is defined, and it applies to whether you can be white with disabilities, you can be black, Hispanic, Jewish, basically everything other than the majority of the United States, which is white or Caucasian Christian males. Now, one of the biggest contributors to making this known out in the world is the University of Michigan. If you're unaware, the University of Michigan, the acceptance was set up on a point system. It no longer is, but it was set up on a point system where you had to earn 100 points to get accepted into the school. If you did not earn 100 points, you just wouldn't get accepted, and that's kind of just how it was. Now, one of the things that is important to know is that a perfect score on the SAT, a 2400, would get you 12 points towards your acceptance to Michigan, whereas being of the minority group would get you 20 points automatically. And that's about a fifth of what you need to get accepted, so that's a pretty hefty deal. And so Carl Cohen, who's actually a philosophy professor at the University of Michigan, he brought up the Gratz and Bollinger case, which was basically a Supreme Court case that had a girl named Jennifer Gratz up against the University of Michigan and its president to get her acceptance into Michigan without having that extra 20 points of her being the minority, because she was a white woman, and so she didn't get those 20 points. Unfortunately, University of Michigan won out in that case, and their claim was that it was for class diversity, which is probably what you'll hear a lot of throughout my speech. That also happens in a lot of other universities, as well as workplaces that people try to get jobs at as well. A man named Gary Orfield, he's an American professor of education, law, political science, and urban planning at the University of California in Los Angeles. He said, if institutions are to endure, they must open up to include those who have been historically excluded. Now, what he's saying there is that if institutions and universities are to continue thriving, that they need to open up to those who've been historically excluded, meaning that throughout history, people who've been discriminated against and, you know, have not gotten all the benefits that the majority has, that the doors need to be opened up to them so that they can get all the benefits that we've gotten. And to understand what he's saying, we have to take a look all the way back at the Jim Crow laws, which started out in the late 1800s. And basically what they did was they prohibited African Americans from having any rights. So rights such as going to the bathroom, they had lynch laws where, you know, it was legal to make fun of, beat, and publicly abuse African Americans. And they had just a bunch of these Jim Crow laws that allowed these things to happen. One of which was most popular was the voting. And the voting allowed Democrats to vote, but you could only be a Democrat if you were white, and, you know, therefore you could only vote if you were white. So that prohibited that law. And so between 1941 and 1964, many civil rights acts were passed to try and get rid of these laws, or at least do their best to cover them up. One of which was Lyndon B. Johnson's Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act said that the contractor will not discriminate against any employee or applicant for employment because of the race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The contractor will take affirmative action to ensure that the applicants are employed and that employees are treated during their employment without regard to their race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Meaning, he said that if you're going to hire somebody, you can't hire them based on if they're black, blue, brown, purple, or green. You have to hire them if they're a suitable worker for you. Now, a lot of companies will say that they do promote this, but that they also promote diversity. And that's where affirmative action comes into play. Affirmative action, as we said before, basically is using someone's race or religion or sexual preference or national origin or gender to hire somebody to create diversity in a workplace or in a university, which is not fair, and that should be done away with. Popular freelance writer Lowry S. Friedman wrote this. It says, "Preference discourages excellence, integrity, and self-reliance, and offering to help those with unequal opportunities is understandable, but more opportunities should be given to people based on merit and those who achieve them." So what he's saying there is that more opportunities should be given to people who work for those opportunities. The people who don't work for those opportunities should not be given the same opportunities. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it's unfair if I work really hard for something and someone who doesn't do anything gets the same recognition. It's kind of like working on a group project together. If I do the whole project and we both get A's, which one of us earned it? I mean, I did, but he got the same thing I did. Therefore, next time he's not going to have any reason to work for that like I did. So he's just going to coast along, and, you know, he'll realize that he'll get the same thing I'm going to get. And if it's good, hey, it's good. If it's bad, oh well. He'll pick somebody else next time. Lowry Friedman goes on to say that it's insulting, and by lowering academic qualifications for African Americans, it inevitably sends a message that they, or any minority, it sends them an unfair advantage that is created that could be rectified rather than accepted due to historical discrimination. Now also what he's saying here is, instead of working towards something to change it, instead of making it better, people who support affirmative action are taking comfort in this act, that they have been hurt in the past, or maybe not even them, maybe their ancestors have been racially discriminated against in the past, and they want to reap the benefits from that now, instead of trying to work hard, get past that hump in the road, move on to bigger and better things for themselves, which is also not fair. And so the solution to this affirmative action problem is fairly simple, and it's probably the most effective one. If companies and schools can just stop hiring on race and gender and sexual preference and national origin and things like that, and hire on merit alone, which I believe is what we should hire everybody on, and accept people to schools based on, then affirmative action would probably be pretty quickly eliminated from most companies. Now one thing locationally, sometimes it's hard if you're in an urban area and there's only a bunch of white people around. That's understandable, but even in that case, you can still hire the most qualified to at least promote the fact that you hire the most qualified people that you can. In other places, like the Carolinas, for example, there's a diverse group of people, and that would be great if you can hire whoever is the best worker. It would naturally weed out those people who don't want to work for anything and make people strive to work harder to get a place in the world. And then that would naturally do away with affirmative action. And that's how it's going to end. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good job.